The brilliant crystal chandeliers in the wedding hall shattered the air with the crashing sound of a broken wine glass. Sharp and piercing like the cut in Lamon's own heart. She stood motionless, her pristine Vera Wang wedding dress now stained crimson like blood, soaking from her shoulder down to the hem. A venomous velvet rose blooming amidst the celebration. Her fingers clenched the bouquet of white carnations so tightly that the thorns pierced her delicate skin. Yet the physical pain was nothing compared to the wound bleeding in her soul. Before Lam An, Duong Thien Hao, the man to whom she had dedicated 3 years of her youth, uttered each word with a guttural growl, his voice like sharp knives slicing into her ears. "I cannot marry a greedy woman like you. I've loved my Anne for a long time. This wedding today is just a play." He squeezed Lam Myan's waist tightly. Her paternal half-sister, his face filled with triumph and disdain. Lam Myan, in her immaculate white dress, nestled close to Duong Thien Hao, her eyes feigning tears but a slight smirk playing on her lips. Like a cat that had just caught a mouse, the hall erupted in whispers and murmurs, a mix of pity, schadenfreude, and curiosity, all eyes fixed on Lam An. Flashbulbs from news cameras flickered incessantly, their bright flashes like tumultuous waves, tearing apart the perfect facade she had painstakingly built. Lam An subtly licked her lips, tasting the bitter saltiness of tears. Yet her amber eyes were dry as a desert, not a single tear falling, even though her heart felt so constricted it seemed impossible to breathe. She looked down at the beggar being roughly restrained by 2 security guards. His tattered collar clutched tightly as he was dragged from the reception. His face was a crisscross of hideous burn scars, disfigured to a terrifying degree, yet his cold, steel-gray eyes were fixed on her, as if trying to pierce her very soul. The beggar, no one else but the one who had stormed into the wedding hall minutes earlier, causing a commotion, and had just been apprehended by the security team. "Oh, really?" Lam An let out a soft, bell-like laugh, clear yet tinged with bitterness and madness, sending shivers down everyone's spines. She ripped off the pristine white veil from her head, using it to roughly wipe the red wine stain from her wedding dress, as if wishing to cleanse herself of all the filth and deceit that had just entered her life. "Then, allow me to do something even crazier," she declared, her voice still clear but now edged with a defiant, challenging note. Lam An glided across the red carpet, her high-slit gown revealing her bare, fair legs treading directly over the shattered glass shards from the broken wine glass. Yet she felt no pain. Or perhaps, the pain in her heart overshadowed everything. She lunged towards the beggar, her slender but resolute hand grabbing his ragged collar, pulling him close to her, startling him to a halt. The scent of wine and blood, mingled with the distinct musty odor of a homeless person, assailed Lam An's nostrils, yet she did not flinch, even taking a deep breath, as if to imprint this mad moment into her memory. Her amber eyes stared directly into the beggar's cold gray ones, without a hint of fear or hesitation. "Do you dare to marry me?" she demanded, her voice echoing through the hall, silencing the entire space, leaving only the clicking of cameras and the gasps of witnesses. The beggar snorted, his chapped lips barely moving. "You're crazy," he uttered, his voice deep and raspy, like stone grinding against stone, laden with skepticism and indifference. "Exactly." Lam An tilted her head, her dark hair falling to obscure half her face, revealing a wild, challenging smile. She whirled around and screamed at Duong Phin Hao. Her words like poisonous arrows piercing his heart. See that? I'd rather marry this beggar than be with trash like you. The entire assembly held its breath. No one daring to utter a word. All utterly shocked by Lam On's audacious and unexpected act. She extended her fair hand to the beggar. A decisive gesture. Without the slightest hesitation. 1 second. 2 seconds. Then, his scar-riddled, calloused hand slowly took hers. Like an iron lock, gripping Lam On's soft hand tightly. She distinctly felt the rough texture. The uneven scars on his skin, old wounds that would make any other girl recoil in disgust. Yet Lam An saw them as a mark. An affirmation of her wild choice. All right, the beggar nodded, a strange, fleeting glint appearing in his pale gray eyes. Like a hawk eyeing its prey. But I don't have money for a ring. Without a word, Lam An removed the 10-carat diamond ring Duong Phin Hao had given her. The expensive ring he had boasted about everywhere. And threw it forcefully to the ground in front of him, where it rolled a short distance at Duong Phin Hao's feet. Use this. It's trash anyway, she declared, her voice filled with utter contempt. Duong Phin Hao was speechless. His face flushed with anger and humiliation. But he couldn't utter a word. He never expected Lam An to do something so insane. Lam Myan beside him also turned pale. Her eyes filled with envy and fear. She didn't see the devilish smirk that flickered across the beggar's chapped lips as he bent down to pick up the glittering diamond ring. Now covered in dust. To Dick, in his disguise as a filthy beggar, held the ring up, a cold glint in his gray eyes. He didn't care about the diamond's value. What he cared about was Duong Phin Hao's humiliation. And more than that, the captivating madness of the woman before him. He gripped Lam On's chin, his rough hands touching her smooth skin, and pressed a kiss to her lips, thick with the taste of wine and blood, and even the scent of street dust. It was a rough, possessive kiss, so sudden Lam An couldn't react. The entire hall fell silent again, all utterly stunned by the sight. Before Lam An could react, before she could push him away, she heard his deep, raspy voice whisper in her ear, like a curse or a promise, "My dear wife, remember your promise of 500 billion." Lam An looked up, her amber eyes meeting his gray ones, still a little bewildered. A little shocked, but then, a wild smile bloomed on her lips. 500 billion? Oh, she would show the Duong family exactly what the price of betrayal was. While the wedding hall remained in chaos and ceaseless murmurs, to Dick, still clad in the disguise of a filthy beggar, was secretly issuing orders to his trusted assistant, Long Vu. Through a tiny Bluetooth earpiece hidden in his disheveled hair. Long Vu, mobilize emergency funds. 500 billion. Crush the Duong family. Right now. His voice was deep and husky, yet filled with an authority utterly at odds with his disheveled appearance. Long Vu, on the other end of the line, was surprised. He knew to Dick was a cold and ruthless CEO. But he had never seen him act so recklessly and swiftly. "Sir, are you sure? This is no small sum. And it will expose your identity, at least in part." Long Vu tried to caution him. But he knew well that once to Dick made a decision, no one could change his mind. Absolutely. Furthermore, if Lam An said 500 billion, then it must be 500 billion. And I will not allow anyone to defile my wife. To Dick emphasized each word, "my wife." A knowing smile flickering across his scarred face. Lam An, leaning against him, was completely unaware of this silent conversation. She only felt the warmth of his body. A strange warmth that brought with it an unusual sense of security. She looked up at his scar-riddled face. In that moment, she felt an inexplicable pull. "Hey, what's your name?" she asked. Her voice suddenly softer. Dick looked down at her, his cold gray eyes softening ever so slightly. "Dick," he replied, his voice still husky, but with less indifference. "So, I married Dick," Lam An murmured, as if reminding herself, or perhaps etching the name into her mind. A faint, mysterious smile played on her lips. She didn't know that the name Dick was not that of a beggar, but of the most powerful undercover CEO in the underworld, who held the fate of countless corporations in his hands. Dick held Lam An a little tighter, his eyes sweeping across the chaotic crowd, settling on Duong Thien Hao and Lam Mayan, whose faces were pale with shock and anger. A sneer curled his lips. "Duong Thien Hao, Lam Mayan, you will pay dearly for what you've done. And Lam An, my woman, you will be the queen in this game." Into Dick's mind, a complex torrent of thoughts raged, filled with calculations. Lam An, this woman. She's truly insane. A captivating madness. She's the perfect pawn for my plan. A pawn I never even anticipated. This game, now, isn't just about revenge. It's a thrilling play. And Lam An is an unwilling participant. Yet an unpredictable variable. He recalled Lam An throwing the wineglass at Duong Thien Hao. Her eyes filled with determination and contempt. She wasn't a weak, submissive woman. She was a tigress cornered, ready to strike back at anyone who dared to harm her. She might be the key to completing my revenge. Not just against the Duong family, but against those who exploited me in the past. Dick mused. The factory explosion 10 years ago. The incident that stole his family, robbed him of his childhood, and left him with scars both physical and emotional. The memory of the flames erupting, the screams, the betrayal of those he once trusted, still haunted him every night. He had miraculously survived, but had lived in the shadows, building the Dark Eagle Empire from scratch, just waiting for this day of retribution. Now, that day had come, and Lam An, this woman, had unexpectedly become a part of that plan. She doesn't recognize me, doesn't recognize the Dick from 10 years ago. But what about me? Why'd I feel such a strange familiarity when I look into her amber eyes? Or is it just an illusion? He wondered, a surge of curiosity in his heart. Meanwhile, Lam An was also lost in her own thoughts. Dick, this beggar, he actually dares to marry me. And he even dares to demand 500 billion. He's really crazy. But that kiss, and the way he looked at me, it's not like an ordinary beggar. She felt his warm breath on her ear, and the sensation of his hand gripping hers. No matter how terrifying his appearance, she felt a strange sense of calm when she was with him. Perhaps this is my chance, a chance for revenge, to humiliate the Duong family, to humiliate Duong Thien Hao and Lam Mayan. They think they can discard me like an old item? They're wrong. Lam An will never give up so easily, she thought, a glimmer of determination in her eyes. She had endured enough humiliation and scorn since her family fell from grace. Her father, Lam Keen, had been betrayed by those he once trusted, pushed into bankruptcy, and the Duong family, who were once close business partners of the Lam family, had turned their backs on them, even harming Lam Keen to seize his assets. Lam Mayan, The sister she once loved had become an accomplice to the enemy, stealing her fiancé. All that pain and humiliation had accumulated within Lam An, transforming her into a strong, resilient woman, afraid of nothing. "All right, Duong Thien Hao, Lam An, you want to play? I'll give you the most unforgettable performance of your lives. And to Dick, this mysterious beggar, will be my perfect co-star." Lam An thought, a mysterious smile playing on her lips. She had no idea that her co-star was no ordinary beggar, and that he harbored a revenge plan even more terrifying than anything she could imagine. In the midst of the chaos, To Dick subtly smirked, his gray eyes fixed on Duong Thien Hao, his gaze filled with challenge and mockery. "Young Master Duong, thank you for yielding your wife to me. I'll take good care of her." His voice was deep and husky, yet loud enough for everyone to hear. Duong Thien Hao was so enraged his face flushed crimson. He wanted to lunge at To Dick but was held back by Lam An. Lam An, meanwhile, had turned ashen. She couldn't believe her ears. She had thought Lam An would collapse, would cry hysterically, but she never expected her to be so insane as to marry a beggar. This wasn't the outcome she had wanted. Her plan was to completely humiliate Lam An, to make her lose everything. But now, Lam An had become the center of attention, and somehow, she had gained the upper hand. Lam An, resting her head onto Dick's shoulder, felt his warm breath on her hair. She couldn't deny that, despite his terrifying appearance, she felt a strange sense of security with him. "Let's go, darling husband. Let's go register our marriage. Hurry. I want to get that marriage certificate soon to crush these despicable people," she said, her tone filled with eagerness and determination. To Dick chuckled softly, a rare smile appearing on his scarred face, making him seem a little less intimidating. "All right, my dear wife, as you wish," he replied, then turned to signal Long Vu through his earpiece. Just a slight nod. Long Vu understood, immediately dispatching Dark Eagle's secret fleet to pick up To Dick and Lam An. Minutes later, a sleek, black Rolls-Royce Phantom, without a license plate, suddenly appeared in front of the wedding hall, drawing all eyes. Two tall men in black suits and sunglasses stepped out, opening the rear door respectfully. To Dick took Lam An's hand, walking straight towards the car, leaving behind a chaotic wedding hall, a furious Duong Thien Hao, and a Lam An whose face was pale with envy and fear. Before getting into the car, Lam An turned back, looked directly at Duong Thien Hao and Lam An, and offered a mysterious smile. "Goodbye, trash. My wedding, though absurd, is the beginning of a sweet revenge," she said, her tone full of defiance. Then subtly winked at To Dick. To Dick understood. He squeezed her hand, a faint smirk on his lips. "Indeed, my dear wife. Just wait and see." The Rolls-Royce sped away, leaving behind all the curious, judgmental gazes and the belated regrets of those who had turned their backs on Lam An. Lam An and To Dick, two strangers, two fates seemingly destined never to intertwine, were now bound by an absurd marriage, a marriage built on the foundation of revenge. But could true love blossom from this madness and exploitation? And how would their hidden secrets be revealed in the challenging journey of revenge ahead? The Rolls-Royce Phantom glided smoothly along the road, passing through the curious and judgmental stares of the crowd still gathered outside the wedding hall. Inside the car, Lam An leaned her head against the soft leather seat, still in a state of exhilaration and disbelief at what she had just done. She had done something no one would have dared to imagine. A spectacular plot twist in her own wedding. She glanced at Dick, who was sitting beside her. In the dim light of the car, the intricate scars on his face became clearer, like marks of time and suffering. But those cold gray eyes now held a hint of amusement, a glimmer of light that was hard to decipher, making her curious. "Hey, are you sure you don't regret it?" Lam An asked, breaking the silence. Her voice still carried a hint of defiance. Dick turned to look at her, a knowing smile playing on his chapped lips. "Regret? My dear wife, the word regret isn't in Dick's dictionary. Only revenge and victory are." His voice was deep and husky, carrying a touch of arrogance and surprising confidence. Lam An chuckled softly. "Good. Then we're well matched. You know, I actually thought you'd be scared and run away when I offered you my hand." Dick raised an eyebrow. "Me? Scared? You underestimate me too much. Lam An, I dare to face the whole world to achieve my goals. Besides, you're quite interesting. A true madwoman," he said, his tone full of playful teasing, which surprised Lam An a little. She didn't expect a beggar to say such things. And the way he called her a madwoman didn't anger her at all. Instead, she found it somewhat intriguing. The car stopped in front of an ancient but extremely luxurious building, heavily guarded by men in black suits. Lam An frowned slightly. "Where is this? Aren't we going to register our marriage?" Dick opened the car door, stepped out, and then offered her his hand. "The civil registration office is waiting for us inside. And this is one of my workplaces. Consider it our bridal chamber too," he said naturally, making Lam An almost stumble. "What? Are you kidding me? Bridal chamber?" She stared at him in disbelief, her face full of shock. Dick smirked. "Did you think I'd let my wife wander the streets after an elopement? Even if it's a fake marriage, I don't want to be known as irresponsible." Lam An looked at him for a moment, then reluctantly stepped out of the car. She admitted, he was right. After all, she was being turned against by both the Lam family and the Duong family, with nowhere else to go. And besides, she also wanted to know who Dick really was, and why a beggar could have such a large security detail and a luxurious car. Inside, a middle-aged man in a black suit, looking very neat and professional, was already waiting. He bowed respectfully to Dick. "Sir, everything is ready. The paperwork has been prepared." He glanced at Lam An with curiosity, but dared not ask. Dick nodded. "Good. Make it quick. I don't want to waste time." The marriage registration process was unbelievably fast. All formalities were completed in less than 15 minutes. Lam An held the marriage certificate in her hand, bearing her name and Dick's, feeling as if she were dreaming. She had actually married a beggar. Or was he not a beggar? She glanced at Dick, who maintained a calm expression, as if this was completely normal. After everything was settled, Dick led Lam An to a luxurious penthouse apartment on the top floor of the building. The apartment was vast, with modern and refined design, offering a panoramic view of the entire city. Lam An couldn't help but be overwhelmed. You live here?" she asked, her voice betraying her surprise. Dick nodded, taking off his tattered coat, revealing a black shirt underneath. And then she clearly saw his firm, rippling muscles beneath the thin fabric. The scars on his face couldn't hide his masculine rugged handsomeness. Lam An couldn't help but swallow. She knew Dick was no ordinary beggar. Definitely not. Of course. Did you think I'd let my wife live in a slum with a real beggar? He said. His tone full of sarcasm. My dear wife, even if it's a fake marriage, I wouldn't be that cruel, he said as he headed towards the bathroom. You should take a shower. You still smell of wine and blood, he added, then disappeared behind the bathroom door. Lam An stood still for a moment, then sighed. She also felt dirty and tired. She stepped into the bathroom, soaking herself in the hot water. Feeling the relaxation spread throughout her body, she suddenly realized that this was the first time all day she had truly been able to relax. The hot water soothed the thorn pricks on her hands, washing away the lingering smell of wine and blood. After her shower, Lam An emerged to find Dick already dressed in black silk pajamas, looking completely different from his beggar disguise earlier. He sat on a luxurious leather sofa, holding a tablet, and on the table in front of him was a thick stack of documents. Hey, do you know how to give a foot massage? Dick suddenly spoke, his eyes still fixed on the tablet screen. Lam An was stunned. What did you say? Dick looked up at her, a hint of amusement in his eyes. I asked if you know how to give a foot massage. My feet are a bit tired. Lam An almost burst out laughing. A powerful undercover CEO asking his wife, no, his fake wife, for a foot massage? This was truly absurd. Do you think I'm your servant? Lam An asked, her voice full of indignation. No, I think you're my wife. Dick replied nonchalantly. A wife should take care of her husband, right? Besides, you just eloped with me to humiliate the Duong family. And I just helped you get a CEO husband status. Now it's time for you to pay up, he said. Still not taking his eyes off the tablet screen, but a cunning smirk playing on his lips. Lam An was speechless. She couldn't believe his impudence. But he was right. She had just used him to achieve her goal. Moreover, looking at the way he worked, she guessed he was handling important business. All right, you win. But don't you dare lay a finger on me. Lam An grumbled, then reluctantly sat down in front of him, beginning to massage his long feet. Dick continued his video conference with a group of foreigners on his tablet. He spoke fluent English, his voice cold and decisive, which surprised Lam An. She didn't expect a beggar to be so proficient in English. He was talking about massive projects, enormous figures, making Lam An even more curious about his true identity. While Lam An was carefully massaging Dick's feet, she heard him speak to his foreign partners through the video conference. His voice was deep and husky, yet full of authority. Every word was sharp and decisive. He was discussing a multi-billion-dollar deal about acquiring a large technology corporation. Lam An couldn't help but be astonished. This was a meeting of a true business magnate, not a beggar. She suddenly remembered his words, "My dear wife, remember your promise of 500 billion. At the time, she thought he was just joking. But now, she began to believe that he was fully capable of making it a reality. She had a feeling she had either stumbled upon a huge bargain, or perhaps, a huge disaster. Dick, while focusing on the meeting, also felt Lam An's meticulousness as she massaged his feet. She didn't just go through the motions, she was truly attentive to every movement. The faint, gentle scent of her body after her shower wafted through the air, making him feel unusually relaxed. He suddenly realized how long it had been since he had felt such peace. His life was always full of conspiracies, endless battles. Living under the guise of a beggar, at times, brought him a strange sense of freedom, an escape from the shackles of power and responsibility. When the meeting ended, Dick put his tablet aside, then looked down at Lam An. "You did well. Thank you, dear wife," he said, his tone a little playful. Lam An stood up, stretching. "You're a real exploiter. Now I'm going to bed," she said, then turned to walk towards the bedroom. Dick unexpectedly grabbed her wrist. "Hey, where are you going to sleep?" Lam An turned back in surprise. "In the bedroom, of course," she replied. Dick smirked. "My bedroom. So we'll sleep together. We're husband and wife. After all." Lam An's eyes widened. "What? Are you crazy? We have a fake marriage." Dick shrugged. "A fake marriage is still a marriage. Besides, do you want Duong Thien Hao to know we're not sleeping together? Do you want him to suspect something? Do you want your revenge plan to fall apart?" he said. His reasoning so sound that Lam An couldn't argue. She knew he was right. For the script to be perfect, they had to genuinely appear to be a married couple. All right, you win. But don't you dare lay a finger on me." Lam An gritted her teeth, then stomped into the bedroom. Dick chuckled softly, a rare and knowing smile. He followed her into the bedroom. The room was spacious and luxurious, with a king-sized bed covered in crisp white silk sheets. Lam An immediately climbed into bed, turning her back to him, pulling the covers over her head. Dick said nothing. He turned off the lights, then also got into bed, maintaining a certain distance from her. The room was plunged into darkness and silence, only the steady sound of their breathing filling the air. Lam An lay still, trying to sleep, but her mind couldn't stop thinking about Dick. Who exactly was this beggar? Why did he have the filthy appearance of a vagrant, yet possess immense power and wealth? And why did his eyes look so familiar? She recalled a memory of a young boy, 10 years ago, in a horrifying fire. She shook her head, trying to banish those thoughts. Perhaps she was overthinking, but she didn't know that right beside her. Dick was also wide awake, his gray eyes fixed on her back. He knew what she was thinking. He knew she was curious about him. And he also knew that the day the truth was revealed, it would no longer be a fake marriage. He was looking forward to that day. Looking forward to the moment he could reveal his true identity and exact revenge on all those who had harmed him and his family. "Lam An, you will be mine forever," he whispered in the darkness, his voice deep and possessive. That night, neither Lam An nor Dick could sleep. The presence of the other beside them was both strange and oddly familiar. Lam An felt his steady breath, a faint masculine scent emanating from his body. Nothing like the musty smell of a beggar she had imagined. She didn't know that, even in sleep, Dick remained vigilant. He was accustomed to living in danger, accustomed to being wary of everything around him. But tonight, beside Lam An, he felt a strange peace, a sense of security. He closed his eyes, trying to dispel the images of the fire years ago, of those who had caused him such loss. But they kept resurfacing, as vivid as if they had happened yesterday. He recalled his promises, his vows to avenge all those who had committed those crimes. And Lam An, this woman, had unintentionally become a part of that plan. He didn't know that she also had her own secrets. Secrets that, when revealed, would force both of them to face even greater challenges. The next morning, Lam An awoke as the morning sun streamed through the large window, illuminating the room. She blinked, taking a moment to realize where she was. She turned. The pillow beside her was empty. Dick had already risen. Lam An walked out of the bedroom, following the fragrant smell of coffee, and found Dick sitting at the dining table in the kitchen, dressed in a simple t-shirt, his disheveled hair neatly trimmed, clearly revealing the flawless half of his handsome face, in stark contrast to the scarred half. He was reading the newspaper, a cup of black coffee beside him. "Good morning, dear wife," he said, without looking up. Lam An was slightly startled by the endearment, but then grew accustomed to it. "Good morning. You're up early? There are things that need to be handled," he replied curtly. "Do you want anything to eat?" Lam An approached the dining table and saw a lavish breakfast already laid out: toast, omelette, sausages, and salad. She couldn't help but be surprised. "Did you make this yourself?" Dick smirked. "Did you think I'd let my wife go hungry? Even if it's a fake marriage, I'm not that bad." Lam An sat down, picked up a fork, and took a bite of the omelette. Surprisingly delicious. She never thought a man like him could cook so well. During breakfast, Dick's phone rang constantly. He continuously received calls and messages, each one related to colossal financial figures, multi-million-dollar business deals. Lam An sat beside him, pretending not to care, but in reality, she was listening to every word he said. She gradually pieced together a larger picture of his identity: a powerful, mysterious, and incredibly dangerous man. She knew she had stepped into a big game, and she had to be very careful not to get caught in its whirlpool. But a part of her felt excited. Her life had been too bland and painful. Now, perhaps, it was time for a change. And Dick, this enigmatic beggar, would be the one to help her do it. She didn't know that her fate had been intertwined with his for a long time. From that fateful moment 10 years ago that neither of them had recognized. Chapter 3. Layered Secrets: The Fateful Encounter 10 years ago. The days that followed Dick's unexpected breakfast with Lam An passed in a strange blend of false tranquility and chaotic emotions. Lam An and Dick lived under one roof, their bond growing deeper, not just as a fake married couple but as savior and saved. Two wounded souls finding an unusual resonance. Lam An gradually grew accustomed to Dick's presence, to a mysterious yet incredibly captivating man. She no longer feared the scars on his face. Instead, she saw them as part of his story, a mark of resilience. She also grew accustomed to his sudden disappearances for hours to handle Dark Eagle's business, or his abrupt late-night video calls. She witnessed him transform from a filthy beggar into an authoritative, cold CEO, making ironclad decisions that could alter the fate of entire corporations. That stark contrast both intrigued and drew her in. Dick, too, found himself increasingly drawn to Lam An's madwoman personality. Her fearlessness. She wasn't the type of weak woman who only cried or relied on others. She was intelligent, sharp, and at times, her directness made him smile. He vividly remembered her casually asking her beggar husband for a foot massage while he was on a video conference with international partners. At the time, he thought she was just trying to tease him. But seeing the amusement and slight innocence in her eyes, he felt a strange warmth spread through his chest. He realized that Lam An's presence had brought a new color to his life, which had long been dark and filled with hatred. She was like a ray of sunshine dispelling the gloomy clouds in his heart. However, despite their deepening bond, a nagging worry still lingered in Lamon's mind. She knew Dick was the CEO of Dark Eagle, a powerful underground force. She also knew he was the boy she had saved 10 years ago. But did he truly love her? Or was she still just a pawn in his game of revenge? The fear of being used, of being betrayed once again, kept circling in her mind. She had been betrayed by Duong Thien Hao, harmed by Lam Mayan, and those emotional scars remained, deeper than the physical scars onto Dick's body. She didn't want to be a victim of deception again. The unspoken suspicion in Lamon's heart, though she tried to ignore it, grew larger day by day. One afternoon, while Dick was in a video call with Long Vu, he accidentally left his tablet on the coffee table without logging out. Lam An walked by and saw the screen still displaying the chat with Long Vu. With her curious nature and hidden hacking skills, a secret even Dick was unaware of, she couldn't resist taking a quick glance. The last message made her heart almost stop. Sir. The absurd wedding plan was a complete success. Lamon's marriage to you has humiliated the Duong family. And she is indeed a good pawn for us to access the Lam family's secrets we need. Next step. We will begin to extract information from Lam An about the Lam family's underground banking system. And use her to. The message was cut off. But the intention was clear. Lam An felt as if she had been struck by lightning. Use her. She took a step back, feeling as if the whole world was spinning. She had thought that Dick had genuine feelings for her. That he married her not just for revenge but out of gratitude. Out of love. But no. It was all just a plan. A more sophisticated exploitation than anything Duong Thien Hao had done to her. She was a pawn. A tool for him to achieve his goals. Even to extract information about her own family. Anger and disappointment surged through Lam An like a raging fire. She felt so foolish for having put her trust in him. In the beggar she had saved. In this powerful Dark Eagle CEO. This time, the wound was even deeper than before. Because it came from the person she had started to trust. Started to have feelings for. Without a word of explanation. Without a goodbye, Lam An silently left the penthouse. She took nothing with her but the clothes on her back and her phone. She called an old friend, asking for help. She didn't want Dick to find her. Didn't want to face that deception again. She felt too tired of the schemes. The calculations. She wanted to disappear. To escape from everything. When Dick finished his meeting, he returned to the coffee table to retrieve his tablet. He suddenly noticed the screen was still displaying the chat with Long Vu, and Lam An was gone. A sense of unease enveloped him. He immediately checked Lam An's phone. No trace. He called Long Vu, his voice deep, filled with urgency. Where is Lam An? Where is she? Long Vu was surprised. Sir, I thought she was with you? She's gone. Check all the security cameras in the building. And deploy all Dark Eagle forces. Search for her across the city. Immediately. Dick's voice became urgent and commanding. He felt a surge of anger. Not because she had run away. But because he didn't understand why. He thought of the possibility that she had read the chat with Long Vu, and he realized how careless he had been. Dick didn't hesitate for a second. He immediately shed his ordinary disguise, revealing the true nature of a ruthless and decisive undercover CEO. He mobilized Dark Eagle's entire network. From elite hackers, covert operatives, to ruthless street gangs. The entire city plunged into a frantic search. All security cameras were accessed. All of Lam On's personal information was scrutinized. Every nook and cranny of the city was scoured. He was going insane. The anger and fear of losing Lam An made him lose his usual composure. He couldn't let her disappear like that. She was his benefactor, the one who had brought light into his life. And she was also his wife. Whether fake or real, she was his. Long Vu had never seen his CEO so terrifying. To Dick constantly made phone calls, issuing orders in a cold, decisive voice, pushing his subordinates to their absolute limit. "Have you found her yet? Report immediately," he snarled into the phone. His eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep and worry. He knew he had made a mistake by letting Lam An read that chat. He had been too complacent, too confident that she would never suspect him. But now, the most important thing was to find her and explain himself. He couldn't let her misunderstand that he was only using her. He was grateful to her. He had started to have feelings for her. Feelings that went beyond the confines of a fake marriage. Lam An found refuge in an old, secluded house in the outskirts of the city, where an old friend of hers, an anonymous hacker, lived. She told her friend the whole story. From being jilted at the altar, to marrying to Dick, and then discovering that he was only using her. Her friend listened silently, then sighed. "You always get yourself into trouble, Lam An. But this time, you've gotten yourself involved with a shark." Lam An looked out the window, her eyes filled with weariness. "I know, but I don't want to be used anymore. I want to escape from everything." She didn't know that the secluded house, seemingly safe, was already in Dark Eagle's sights. To Dick was not just a powerful CEO, he was also a master of strategy and tracking. He was accustomed to hunting down the most dangerous enemies. And now, he would use all those skills to find his wife. That night, Lam An couldn't sleep. She tossed and turned, thinking about Dick. She was angry at him for deceiving her. But she also missed the warm moments they had shared. He had saved her from humiliation. He had given her a new identity. And he was also the person she had saved 10 years ago. She couldn't deny that she had developed feelings for him. But the fear of being hurt again was too great. She didn't know what to do. Whom to trust. She felt more lost and alone than ever. She didn't know that outside, the entire city was being turned upside down by a frantic search. A search by a CEO driven mad by the loss of the woman he cared about. In his office, Dick looked at the city map projected on a large screen. Red dots representing Dark Eagle's search teams moving continuously. He snarled, "Increase forces. Find Lam An before the Duong family can make a move. I will not allow anyone to harm her." He knew the Duong family had been watching Lam An for a long time. And her sudden disappearance could make them suspicious. Even prompt them to act first. He had to find her. Not just to explain, but to protect her. He couldn't let her be in danger. He had lost his family once, he would never lose Lam An too. The city was shrouded in silent night. But beneath that calm facade lay a frantic and tense manhunt. Dick, the CEO of Dark Eagle, was going insane. Every minute that passed without news of Lam An was a minute he felt his chest constricting. He had mobilized all his resources. From the city's dense network of surveillance cameras, Dark Eagle's most skilled hackers, to even the most notorious underworld figures, scouring every nook and cranny, every hidden alley to find her. His eyes were bloodshot from lack of sleep. His usually cold face now etched with extreme worry. He continuously called Long Vu. His voice deep and husky yet filled with such authority that both Long Vu and his entire subordinate team felt suffocated by the pressure. "Have you found her yet? Report even the smallest trace immediately. I will not allow anyone to harm her." Meanwhile, Lam An was hiding in her hacker friend's old, secluded house on the outskirts. She thought she was safe, that she had escaped the whirlpool of Tadik and the Duong family. She didn't know that she was turning down a strong protective hand only to push herself into greater danger. The fear of being exploited was still too great, overshadowing all other reason and emotion. She tossed and turned, torn between anger and an unnamed longing for that mysterious man. She couldn't deny that she had started to have feelings for him. But that message, the idea that she was just a pawn, continued to haunt her. Just then, the door to the house suddenly burst open. It wasn't Dark Eagle, but a group of strangers, dressed in black, masked, who stormed in. They were not Tadik's men, but Duong Thien House subordinates. He had been watching Lam An for a long time, and seizing the moment when Tadik was in a chaotic search for her, he had made his move. "Lam An, you think you can hide? You think you can marry a beggar to humiliate me? You'll pay for this." Duong Thien Hao's voice rang out, full of triumphant cruelty. He stepped out from behind his subordinates, his face contorted with hatred. He never expected Lam An to dare to do something so outrageous, and he was determined to make her regret it. Lam An's face went pale. She didn't think Duong Thien Hao could find her so quickly, and even less did she expect him to be so vicious. Her hacker friend immediately reacted, trying to fight back, but alone. He couldn't contend with Duong Thien Hao's numerous and ruthless men. Lam An was grabbed, gagged, and dragged away roughly. She struggled, trying to resist, but it was futile. In that moment, Tadik's image suddenly flashed in her mind. She wished he were here, wished he could come and save her. She suddenly realized that she had been wrong to run away, wrong not to trust him. At the same time, at Dark Eagle's operations center, the large screen displaying the city map suddenly flickered. A small red dot, representing Lam An, had moved to a remote area, and then the signal abruptly cut off. "Sir, Lam An's signal is lost. It seems she's been kidnapped," Long Vu yelled, his face ashen. Tadik immediately rushed to the screen, his eyes gleaming dangerously. "Duong Thien Hao, that bastard, daring to touch my woman," he snarled, his face becoming more terrifying than ever. He immediately ordered, "Long Vu, pinpoint the last location. Mobilize all elite forces. I'm going there immediately." He didn't wait a second longer. Immediately put on his jacket, grabbed the gun hidden under his desk, and rushed out. He would not allow anyone to harm Lam An. He had lost too much already, he couldn't lose her. Lam An's last known location was a deserted warehouse deep in the old industrial zone, a place the Duong family often used for dirty work. When Tadik arrived, it was late at night. Moonlight filtered through the rusty corrugated roof, illuminating the interior, creating ghostly shadows. From outside, he could already hear Lam An's screams and Duong Thien Hao's sadistic laughter. "That bastard, I'll tear you to shreds." Tadik gritted his teeth. He lunged in, kicking open the rusted iron door. Inside the warehouse, Lam An was tied tightly to a chair, her mouth gagged. Duong Thien Hao stood in front of her, laughing cruelly. Around him were nearly 20 bodyguards, all armed with sticks and knives, their faces menacing. "Ah, Lamon's beggar has arrived. Has he? You think you can save her from my hands?" Duong Thien Hao burst out laughing, his tone full of contempt. He had no idea that the man before him was no ordinary beggar, but a devil from hell. A man driven mad by someone touching his woman. To Dick said nothing, his eyes cold as ice, yet burning with rage. He lunged into the group of bodyguards like a hungry tiger, without the slightest hesitation. Each punch and kick was powerful and decisive, carrying the strength of a man who had undergone years of brutal training. Duong Thien Hao's bodyguards were no match for him, though they were numerous. To Dick was a true warrior, an undercover CEO accustomed to fighting in the shadows. He skillfully dodged their attacks, then delivered fatal counter blows. The scene in the warehouse became chaotic. Screams, the sound of breaking bones, and crashing objects echoed throughout the space. To Dick fought 20 bodyguards alone. He was hit a few times. Blood started to trickle from the corner of his mouth, from a wound on his arm. But he did not retreat. He was like a wounded beast, becoming more frantic with each strike. Lam An watched the scene, her heart clenching. She had never seen To Dick fight like this. He was not a weak beggar, nor a CEO who only knew how to sit behind a desk. He was a warrior, a man willing to sacrifice everything to protect the woman he loved. She saw the blood flowing from his mouth, saw the wound on his arm, and felt a pang of sorrow in her heart. Her fear of being exploited vanished. Now, in her eyes, he was a hero. Finally, after a fierce battle, To Dick had knocked down all 20 bodyguards. He breathed heavily, standing upright, blood seeping from the corner of his mouth. But his eyes remained firm, staring directly at a trembling Duong Thien Hao. He couldn't believe his eyes. To Dick, the beggar he despised, was so strong. Who are you?" Duong Thien Hao asked, his voice trembling with fear. To Dick didn't answer. He walked over to Lam An, quickly untying her. Lam An immediately hugged him tightly, tears streaming down her face. You're hurt. It's okay, dear wife. I'm here now." To Dick held her close, feeling the warmth of her body. Peace returned to him. He turned to look at Duong Thien Hao, his eyes filled with contempt. "Duong Thien Hao, you've made the biggest mistake of your life. You touched my woman." His voice was deep and husky, echoing through the warehouse, full of menace. Duong Thien Hao recoiled. He had completely lost his arrogance from earlier. Who are you? Why are you so strong?" To Dick smirked. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. "I am To Dick, CEO of Dark Eagle. And you are the one who destroyed my family 10 years ago." Duong Thien Hao's eyes widened. To Dick? Impossible. You're dead. I have returned from hell to reclaim everything that belongs to me. And now, you will pay for your crimes," To Dick said, a cruel glint in his eyes. He turned to look at Lam An, his eyes softening slightly. He reached out and touched her face, gently wiping away the remaining tears on her cheeks. "Lam An, I disguised myself as a beggar to get close to you because I wanted to repay your kindness. But I fell in love with you the moment you threw that glass of wine at that bastard." To Dick's sudden confession surprised Lam An. Her heart pounded. So, he wasn't just using her, wasn't just repaying a debt. He truly loved her. Lam An's tears flowed again, but this time they were tears of happiness and relief. She hugged him tightly, not wanting to let go for a second. Duong Thien Hao watched the scene. He couldn't believe his ears. The beggar he despised was the CEO of Dark Eagle, and he even loved Lam An. He had lost miserably. To Dick squeezed Lam An's hand. He looked directly at Duong Thien Hao, his eyes full of determination. This is just the beginning. Duong Thien Hao, you will pay for everything you've done. And Lam An, she will witness your downfall. After the horrifying night at the abandoned warehouse, Lam An and To Dick returned to his luxurious penthouse. Lam An couldn't stop worrying about To Dick's injuries. She meticulously disinfected and bandaged him. Her amber eyes filled with concern. To Dick looked at her, a gentle smile gracing his lips. Feeling her genuine care. I'm fine, my dear wife. These injuries are nothing compared to what I've endured over the past 10 years. His voice was deep and husky, yet full of comfort. Lam An leaned into his embrace, feeling the warmth of his body. To Dick's confession at the warehouse still echoed in her ears. I disguised myself as a beggar to get close to you because I wanted to repay your kindness. But I fell in love with you the moment you threw that glass of wine at that bastard. It was like medicine, soothing all her fears and doubts. She knew he wasn't just using her. He truly had feelings for her. What do we do next? Lam An asked, her voice softer. Revenge, To Dick replied, a cold glint in his eyes. Duong Thien Hao and the Duong family will pay dearly for what they've done. Not just to me, but to you and your family as well. He squeezed her hand, a silent promise. Lam An nodded resolutely. Good. I'll help you. I'll make them regret ever crossing us. From deep within, the madwoman, Lam An resurfaced, stronger and more determined than ever. She was no longer afraid, no longer weak. Now, with To Dick by her side, she knew that together, they could accomplish anything. The revenge plan was meticulously detailed. Like a grand chess game To Dick had been brewing for 10 years. Lam An, with her hidden hacker skills, a secret even To Dick had been unaware of, became a crucial piece. She had learned these skills from her hacker friend she had hidden with, and had secretly practiced them during the years her family had shunned her. She sat in front of the computer, her fingers flying across the keyboard, her eyes intensely focused. She infiltrated the Duong family's underground banking system, where they hid their illicit assets and dirty business secrets. Every account, every transaction, every illegal fund was copied by her, exposing undeniable evidence. To Dick sat beside her, watching her work, his eyes filled with surprise and pride. He never imagined this seemingly delicate woman could achieve such extraordinary feats. My dear wife, you truly are a genius, he said, his voice full of admiration. Lam An subtly smirked. Did you think I was just a woman who cried all the time? I am Lam An, and I will make them pay. Simultaneously, To Dick began to publicly reveal his identity as the CEO of Dark Eagle. This news quickly spread throughout the business and underworld, causing a massive shockwave. Duong family's rivals, those who had been oppressed and bullied by them for years, immediately allied with Dark Eagle to fight against the Duong family. Major corporations began withdrawing their investments from Duong family's projects. Banks tightened credit, and Duong family's stock plummeted. Within days, the empire the Duong family had painstakingly built over many years began to collapse rapidly and miserably. Duong Thien Hao and his father, Old Master Duong, descended into madness. They couldn't believe what was happening. They tried everything to resist. But it was futile. Dick not only attacked their finances but also publicly exposed evidence of their crimes. From the factory explosion 10 years ago to their money laundering and tax evasion. Authorities immediately launched investigations, and the Duong family faced complete bankruptcy and legal punishment. Duong Thien Ha was arrested, and Lam My-an was also implicated for her embezzlement and harm to the Lam family. The sweet revenge had finally arrived. At a public press conference, Dick appeared with the elegant, authoritative demeanor of a CEO. He publicly exposed all the Duong family's crimes and announced that he would take responsibility for compensating all their victims. Lam An stood beside him, holding his hand tightly, her eyes filled with pride. She was no longer the abandoned, weak bride. She was the wife of the Dark Eagle CEO, who had fought and triumphed alongside him. After everything settled down, and the Duong family had completely fallen, Dick organized a real wedding. No longer a lavish grand hall. No longer blinding crystal chandeliers. But on the rooftop of the Dark Eagle building, where they could see the entire city at their feet. The sun set, painting the sky crimson, creating a romantic and magnificent scene. Lam An wore a simple but elegant wedding dress. She stood beside Dick, holding his hand. Dick still wore his black suit, but the scars on his face had been significantly faded by cosmetic surgery, leaving only faint traces, like a mark of the past. He looked at Lam An, his eyes filled with love. "Lam An, do you agree to marry me?" Dick asked, his voice deep and warm, devoid of his usual coldness. Lam An smiled, tears gently falling. "I do," she replied, her voice choked with emotion. Dick placed the diamond ring that Lam An had thrown to the ground that day onto her finger. The ring was now clean and sparkled brilliantly under the sunset. He held her hand and gently kissed her lips. "I will be the beggar who steals your heart for the rest of this life," he whispered in her ear, a mysterious smile playing on his lips. Lam An chuckled, hugging him tightly. "And I will be the madwoman who willingly lets you steal her heart." They gazed at the city together, a place that had witnessed their pain and loss, but also where their love had blossomed. A love that began with absurdity, from a fake marriage, but ended with sincerity and happiness. Dick and Lam An, a cold undercover CEO and a strong, madwoman, had found each other amidst the storm, overcome every challenge together, and finally, together, wrote a thrilling and sweet love story. They knew that the road ahead still held many challenges, but with love and trust in each other, they would overcome them all. And from then on, the story of the absurd wedding, the undercover CEO in beggar's clothes, became a legend. A testament that love can bloom in the most unexpected places. And the sweetest revenge is when your enemies witness your happiness. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please give Audio Love Story a like. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to receive new interesting videos. Have fun.